To understand how we reached this breaking point, you need to understand that congressional resignation demands are extraordinarily rare. In the entire history of the United States, sitting members of Congress have formally called for a president's resignation only 3 times. Once during Watergate, when Republicans finally abandoned Richard Nixon. Once during Andrew Johnson's impeachment crisis. And now, in January 2026, with Donald Trump facing a bipartisan coalition demanding his immediate departure. The resolution itself is a 4-page document that reads more like a legal indictment than a political statement. It opens with a preamble invoking the constitutional oath every member of Congress takes to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It then lays out a detailed bill of particulars outlining conduct the signatories describe as fundamentally incompatible with presidential office. The first charge centers on obstruction of justice. The resolution cites Trump's repeated interference with ongoing federal investigations, his public attacks on judges and prosecutors handling cases involving his administration, and what the signatories describe as a systematic effort to undermine the independence of the Department of Justice. It references specific instances where Trump publicly demanded that federal law enforcement drop investigations, prosecute his political opponents, and ignore evidence of criminal conduct by his allies.
The second charge addresses abuse of presidential authority. The resolution details Trump's use of executive power to punish political adversaries, reward loyalists regardless of qualifications, and circumvent congressional oversight. It points to the systematic removal of inspectors general who conducted unfavorable investigations, the installation of political appointees in positions requiring nonpartisan expertise, and the weaponization of federal agencies for partisan purposes. The third charge concerns violations of the constitutional separation of powers. The signatories argue that Trump has repeatedly defied lawful congressional subpoenas, refused to comply with court orders, and publicly encouraged executive branch officials to ignore judicial rulings. They cite his statements declaring that Article 2 of the Constitution gives him the right to do whatever he wants, a claim constitutional scholars universally reject.
The fourth and most severe charge involves conduct threatening national security. The resolution references Trump's handling of classified information, his communications with foreign adversaries without proper oversight, and decisions made without consultation with intelligence and military professionals. While the resolution avoids disclosing classified details, it states that members with access to sensitive intelligence briefings have concluded that Trump's actions pose a direct threat to American security interests. What makes this resolution different from previous impeachment efforts is its bipartisan character. 12 Republicans signed their names to a document calling for a Republican president's resignation. These are not moderate Republicans from swing districts facing tough re-elections. Several are conservative members from safe Republican seats. Several are committee chairs with significant institutional power. And several are close allies of Trump who privately supported him for years before reaching a breaking point.
The political earthquake began at 9:15 a.m. on January 14th, when Representative Michael Chen, a 6-term Republican from Ohio and chairman of the House Oversight Subcommittee on Government Operations, called a press conference in the Capitol. Standing beside him were 11 other Republicans and 35 Democrats. The visual alone was stunning. Republicans and Democrats sharing a podium, presenting a united front against a president from the Republican Party. Chen spoke first, his voice measured, but carrying unmistakable weight. "We are here today because our constitutional oath requires it. We have watched this president systematically violate the constraints of his office, obstruct justice, abuse presidential authority, and endanger national security. We have tried private conversations. We have tried quiet interventions. We have exhausted every avenue short of this public statement. That time has passed. President Trump must resign immediately." The silence in the briefing room was absolute.
Reporters who had covered Washington for decades recognized they were witnessing a historic fracture. Republican members of Congress publicly calling for a Republican president's resignation represented the kind of institutional breakdown that happens perhaps once in a generation.
Representative Sarah Mitchell, a Republican from Texas and member of the House Intelligence Committee, spoke next. Her statement was particularly significant because she had voted against both of Trump's previous impeachments. "I have access to classified intelligence briefings that most Americans will never see," Mitchell said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "What I can tell you is that this president's conduct has compromised sources and methods that protect American lives. He has ignored warnings from our intelligence community. He has made decisions that prioritize his personal interests over national security. I cannot, in good conscience, remain silent any longer." Then came the moment that shifted the entire political landscape. Senator James Morrison, a Republican senator from Florida with close ties to Trump's inner circle, stepped to the microphone. Morrison had campaigned with Trump, defended him through both impeachments, and publicly supported him just weeks earlier. His presence at this press conference signaled that even Trump's most loyal allies had reached a breaking point.
"I have known Donald Trump for 15 years, Morrison began, his voice carrying the weight of personal betrayal. "I supported his campaigns. I defended his policies. I believed he would govern responsibly, despite the controversies. I was wrong. The president I have observed over the past year is not fit to continue in office. He refuses counsel from experienced advisors. He makes impulsive decisions with national security implications. He views the Justice Department as his personal law firm and the military as his private security force. This cannot continue. For the good of the country, he must step down." The political shockwave was immediate. Within minutes, major news networks interrupted regular programming. Cable news anchors struggled to convey the magnitude of what was happening. Political analysts who had covered decades of Washington drama acknowledged they had never seen anything like this. A sitting senator from the president's own party, a close personal ally, publicly calling for his resignation, alongside House Republicans and the entire Democratic leadership. The White House response came swiftly and predictably. Within an hour, Trump posted a series of statements on Truth Social. He called the Republicans who signed the resolution traitors and cowards. He claimed the entire effort was orchestrated by the deep state and his political enemies. He insisted he had done nothing wrong and would never resign under any circumstances. He threatened primary challenges against every Republican who signed the document. But the threats rang hollow. By afternoon, additional Republicans began making statements. Some stopped short of calling for resignation, but acknowledged serious concerns about Trump's conduct. Others publicly stated they would not oppose the resolution if it came to a vote. The unified wall of Republican support that had protected Trump through 2 impeachments was fracturing in real time. Senate Majority Leader McConnell positioned himself carefully. He didn't sign the resignation resolution, but he also didn't defend Trump. In a brief statement, he said the Senate would give serious consideration to any measures addressing presidential conduct and called for constitutional processes to be respected. That language, carefully neutral, signaled that McConnell would not block Senate action if the House moved forward. The shift in Republican sentiment became clearer as the day progressed. Representative David Walsh, a Republican from Pennsylvania, told reporters that he hadn't signed the resolution, but understood why his colleagues did. "We've been trying to work with this president for months," Walsh said. "The problem is he doesn't listen. He doesn't take advice. He makes decisions based on instinct and grievance, rather than policy and law. At some point, you have to ask whether the party can continue defending the indefensible." Behind the scenes, Republican leadership held emergency meetings throughout the afternoon. According to sources familiar with those discussions, the conversations centered not on whether Trump's conduct was problematic, but on how to manage the political fallout. Some argued for defending Trump to maintain party unity. Others insisted that continued defense would damage the party's credibility and cost them the next election. The consensus that emerged was telling. Trump had become a political liability that even his own party could no longer afford to protect unconditionally. By evening, polling data began to surface. An emergency survey conducted by a major political research firm showed that 68% of Americans supported Congress investigating the allegations in the resignation resolution. More significantly, 41% of Republican voters said they believed Trump should resign if the allegations were proven true. Those numbers represented a seismic shift in public opinion within Trump's own base.
The constitutional implications of this moment are profound. A resignation resolution has no binding legal force. Congress cannot compel a president to resign, but the political pressure it creates is enormous. When members of a president's own party publicly declare he is unfit for office, it fundamentally undermines his ability to govern. Presidential historians speaking to multiple news outlets drew parallels to August 1974, when Republican congressional leaders met with Richard Nixon and informed him that he lacked the Senate votes to survive impeachment. Nixon resigned the next day. While Trump has shown no indication he would follow that precedent, the political dynamics are similar. When your own party abandons you, the presidency becomes unsustainable. Legal scholars noted that the resignation resolution could serve as a foundation for a third impeachment effort. If the House moves forward with impeachment proceedings, this bipartisan resolution becomes powerful evidence that Trump's conduct has alienated even members of his own party. It also creates political cover for Republicans who might otherwise face primary challenges for voting to impeach. If 12 Republicans have already called for resignation, voting for impeachment becomes a less politically risky position.
The resolution also impacts Trump's ongoing legal battles. Federal prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions are pursuing criminal cases against him. Defense attorneys typically argue that prosecutions are politically motivated witch hunts, but when members of the defendant's own party are calling for his resignation based on the same conduct, that defense becomes much harder to maintain. Juries are less likely to view prosecutions as partisan overreach when bipartisan coalitions support accountability. The international implications are equally significant. Foreign leaders are watching closely. American adversaries are assessing whether Trump's political position has become so weakened that he lacks the authority to conduct foreign policy effectively. American allies are questioning whether they can rely on commitments made by a president whose own party has declared him unfit for office. The resignation resolution doesn't just affect domestic politics, it undermines American credibility and influence on the global stage. Within Trump's own administration, the resolution is causing chaos. Multiple cabinet officials are reportedly considering resignation. Senior staffers are updating their resumes. Political appointees are distancing themselves from controversial decisions. When the president's own party calls for his departure, loyalty becomes a professional liability rather than an asset.
The question now is what happens next. Several scenarios are possible, and none of them are good for Trump. The first scenario: Trump refuses to resign, and Republicans continue abandoning him. If more Republicans join the call for resignation, if polling shows increasing public support for his departure, if major donors withdraw financial backing, Trump could face an impossible political situation. He might remain in office legally, but he would be unable to govern effectively. Every initiative would face opposition. Every decision would be questioned. His presidency would become a wounded lame duck with over a year remaining in his term. The second scenario: the House moves forward with impeachment. The bipartisan resignation resolution provides political foundation for impeachment articles. If House Republicans conclude that impeachment is inevitable, some may vote for it to maintain credibility with constituents. If enough Republicans join Democrats, the House could impeach Trump for a third time. The Senate would then face the decision of whether to convict and remove him from office. With 12 Republicans already calling for resignation, the political calculus for conviction becomes very different than in previous impeachment trials.
The third scenario. Trump attempts to weather the storm through defiance and counterattacks. This has been his consistent strategy throughout his political career. He could double down, attack the Republicans who signed the resolution, mobilize his base, and dare the party to move against him. The risk is that this strategy has never faced a bipartisan coalition of this magnitude. Defiance works when your party stands behind you. When your own party is calling for your resignation, defiance accelerates political isolation. The fourth and most dramatic scenario: Trump resigns. This seems unlikely given his personality and his consistent refusal to admit fault or accept defeat. But political pressure has a way of changing calculations. If he faces certain impeachment and removal, resignation allows him to control the narrative. He could frame it as stepping down to spare the country from political turmoil. He could claim he accomplished everything he wanted and is moving on to other endeavors. It would be the ultimate face-saving exit from an untenable position. Behind the scenes, Trump's advisors are reportedly divided. Some are urging him to fight, to view the resignation resolution as an attack that proves his enemies are desperate. Others are privately suggesting that resignation might be his best option, allowing him to leave office before criminal cases proceed to trial and before his political standing deteriorates further. According to sources close to the discussions, Trump is rejecting any suggestion of resignation, viewing it as the ultimate humiliation. But reality has a way of imposing itself, regardless of personal preferences. Congressional Republicans are scheduled to hold a conference meeting within the next 48 hours. The agenda includes discussion of the resignation resolution and potential next steps. If that meeting produces additional Republicans calling for Trump's departure, the political avalanche becomes unstoppable. Meanwhile, the 12 Republicans who signed the resolution are facing intense backlash from Trump's base. Death threats have been reported. Primary challenges are being organized. Pro-Trump media outlets are calling them traitors. But the signatories knew this would happen. They made a calculated decision that their oath to the Constitution outweighed political survival. That decision carries profound implications for the future of the Republican Party and American democracy. The countdown is underway. Within days, possibly within hours, the political situation will crystallize. Either Trump survives this moment and limps forward as a politically wounded president, or the pressure becomes overwhelming and he faces a choice between resignation and removal. Either outcome represents a historic inflection point. A bipartisan congressional coalition has declared a sitting president unfit for office. That declaration cannot be walked back. The consequences will reshape American politics for years to come.